I am so excited to be reading you Farmhouse today, and this is a true story of a family who lived in this farmhouse almost 100 years ago. In fact, the author of this story was walking in the woods one day and found this farmhouse. Now by that time, it had been 100 years later and the farmhouse was all broken down and actually getting ready to be torn down. But before they tore it down, the author of this book, whose name is Sophie, went inside that house and rescued some of the treasures that were left in there from the 12 children and their parents, and she used those treasures to put together this story of when they lived in that farmhouse. If you have your copy of Farmhouse, open it up to the first flap, and remember that every time you hear that bell, that means it's time to turn the page. Farmhouse by Sophie Blackall. Over the hill at the end of a road, by a glittering stream that twists and turns, stands a house. Where 12 children were born and raised, where they learned to crawl in the short front hall, where they posed arranged on the wooden stairs, and were measured with marks over the years. Where they carved potatoes and dipped them in paint to pattern the walls with flowers and leaves, and paint the cat about which they lied. For which they were scolded, and maybe they cried, and then were enfolded in forgiving arms, in the serious room where the organ was played and speeches were made. But if they weren't even sorry at all, they were sent to their rooms, where they pored over books about planets and stars and climbed into beds where they dreamed of Mars or dreamed of cats or the distant sea. And whispered secrets, played truth or dare, and lost their teeth and brushed their hair, where they kept collections of tin, toy cars, and feathers and bones and movie stars, where they hung prize ribbons for champion cows that lived in the barn behind the house, and were milked twice a day, no matter the weather, at dawn and at dusk by one child or another, who shivered and grumbled as they crossed the yard, or liked being alone with a flaming cloud, depending on the season, the day, and the child. This picture's funny to me because one of them is really grumpy about doing their chores, and the other one is just smiling. But if you notice, this one is doing chores in the middle of winter, and this one's doing chores in the middle of summer, so you can tell he doesn't like the cold weather. And they fed the calves and mucked out stalls and forked the hay into giant piles and fished for trout in the glittering stream that changed its shape from year to year. And walking home with their rods and flies, they picked gnarled apples to turn into pies. And dragged in mud from the fields outside, so they shook the rug and scrubbed the floors and listened to their mother and did their chores and set the table. And bowed their heads and dished up soup and tore up bread. So it says here that they tore up bread, but if you look up closely, it's just talking about their dinner time routine. So they bowed their heads, that means they prayed for the meal, and they dished up soup, and you can see that right here. There's a big pot of soup that they're all serving from. And they tore up bread, which just means they sliced it up and gave everybody a piece. And they took turns tending the youngest one, who lay with a fever and a spotted tongue. And as they watched, they darned their socks and sewed on buttons that were once shells in the faraway sea that they'd never seen. And they waited for spring, which eventually came, as it did every year with the blossoms and rain, which leaked through the holes that had grown in the roof. collecting in bowls and pans and pails, staining the wall in the short front hall with the flowers and leaves and measures and marks. From the children who all grew up in this house, who went off to school or to work on a farm, or to drive a truck, or to train as a nurse, or study the stars, or have babies themselves, until one day, the youngest child, who was now quite old, took a last look around and picked up her case and opened the door and stepped outside and into a car where her sister was waiting to drive to the sea, which they'd always wanted to see. And the house gave a sigh and slumped on the stones, which caused a slight lean in its beams and its bones, so the door swung open to let in the breeze. And welcomed the rain that rotted the floors, where the saplings grew right next to the stove, where the wallpaper peeled like onion skins and drifted about with the fallen leaves, and the button that was once a shell in the sea. So this book, I was reading this book with a couple of other little children, and they keep referencing a button. And we couldn't find the button on the page, but send me an email if you find the button on this page somewhere. Send me an email with a picture of it, because I want to know if you're able to find it. By the parlor organ that rattled with nuts, put there by a squirrel with rather a fuss, which startled the swallow that fed on the moths that fluttered and flew all over the house. There was even a bear in the basement one year, who slept there all winter until the spring. So this is one of my favorite pages, because if you look close, you can see the little squirrel right up here in the organ, and then the bear is down in the basement. And that's really fun. Which is when I came and cut a path through prickly burdock and nettles and grass, and found what remained of the old farmhouse, where I filled my arms with wallpaper scraps and rain-soaked books and brittle maps and handkerchiefs and a button that was once a shell in the sea. And back at my desk I spread them all out and cherished my gifts from the falling down house. Then I sharpened my pencil and mixed some paint and dipped my brush and cut some shapes and began to imagine the things that took place. In the home where 12 children were born and raised, where they ate and slept and worked and played and laughed and loved and grew quite old, where they'll live on now in this book that you hold, like your stories will, so long as they're told. And that's the end. At the very end here, you'll see a picture of the house, which is just before it was torn down. And then you'll see the author right here in the house collecting all of these dresses and all these beautiful things that she used to create the pictures in this book. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Alright guys, Shepherdess at Harmony Farms here. So excited to be making with you today these little sheep cracker snacks. This is a perfect little spin on what is already known and loved, cream cheese and graham crackers. This is so easy to make and so fun. If you're 8 or 9, you could probably make these by yourself. If you're younger than that, you can make them with the help of an older sibling, your grandma, your parents, whoever is willing to help you. The ingredients are pretty simple. In fact, you probably already have them in your pantry, with exception of these little candy eyeballs, which if you bought the Shepherdess Summer Camp kit, you get a package of these candy eyeballs in that kit. These really add the personality, so you definitely want to have them for this snack. Aside from that, we have our graham crackers, of course. We've got our cream cheese. We have mini marshmallows, which if you don't have mini marshmallows on hand, you can also substitute this with coconut flakes. And if you don't even have coconut flakes on hand, I even made a couple that don't have either coconut or mini marshmallows, and they still look cute. And then for the heads, I personally today am using these little mints. They're perfect little black rounds. You could also use miniature chocolate sandwich cookies, and even at the store they will sell some of those large chocolate baking chips. So you honestly have a lot of options when it comes to choosing the ingredients for this project. So let's just get straight to making a couple of these snacks because I'm personally pretty excited about it. Alright, you just want to start out with your graham crackers here. Then you want to take a liberal, it just depends on how much you like cream cheese. I'm a huge cheese fan, so the more the better. So I'm probably going to be very generous with my cream cheese spread on my personal crackers. You can go a little bit lighter if you like, but I kind of like to spread it around here in a little bit of an oval. Okay, after that, I like to place my head on next. You want to place it just a little bit, kind of lower, close to the bottom, but you still want to keep in mind that you're going to put the marshmallows all around, so you want to not place it entirely at the bottom. So kind of just right to where you have space for plenty of marshmallows at the bottom. And then I will take 2 of my candy eyes. If you have an adult helping you, you might want to have them help you at this time. You might be able to do it yourself. But I just put a little bit of a smear of the cream cheese, kind of a little bit of a smear of cream cheese on there, so to help it stick onto. Cute. Oh, it's already coming together. Oh, you know who this looks like? So I have this little bottle lamb who I raised from the moment he was born. He was born and his mom just wasn't quite feeling well enough to take care of him. He was about 4 pounds. I named him Roger. And I didn't name him Roger, actually. Some of my friends, my little friends, named him Roger. He is the sweetest little thing. He's kind of big now. He's almost ready to be weaned. When he started out, he was only 4 pounds. And he followed me all over the place. And when it was time to feed him, he had a twin sister, so he would have to wait his turn because it's ladies first. So Roger would have to wait for Rosie to eat her bottle first. And while he was waiting on her, he would do circles around and around and around my legs. It was so, so funny and cute to watch. So this little cracker, I'm going to name him Roger in honor of Roger. Alright, so from here, we've got our eyeballs on. It's looking really good so far. Then from here, this is an optional, is to add these little ears. I wasn't going to add the ears at first, and you don't have to, but then my sister came in and said, where are their ears? And she brought me this bag of sliced almonds. To make my sister happy, I put little ears on them. Oh my goodness, this is looking so cute so far. Kind of like what I was saying, if you have very limited ingredients and you don't have marshmallows and you don't have coconut even, don't let it stop you from having fun because these are so adorable, even just as cream cheese crackers with no marshmallows and no coconut. But guys, we're taking it to the next level here. We are going to add little woolly marshmallow balls all around. These would be so fun if you did cupcakes as well. You could make cupcakes and stick these on the top. Alright, the first one is done, guys. Are you kidding me? Look at him. Roger is an absolute winner. Okay, but I can't stop at one because sheeps don't do well when they are alone, so I gotta make a whole flock. This one I'm gonna go ahead and make with the coconut to show you guys how it turns out. Alright, so that's the coconut version. In case you don't have coconut or marshmallows, I do not want you to miss out on this particular snack. So I'm just going to do one that has just cream cheese on it. I'm gonna show it to you and see how you like it. And if you want to get a little bit creative on this, and you don't like the way just the smooth cream cheese looks, in light of the fact that sheep are kind of woolly, give them a little bit of texture there. Make it look a little bit more like a sheep. Guys, I'm so surprised at how this is turning out, even though he doesn't have any marshmallows or any coconut. He still looks so cute. Oh my goodness. I've got to taste test one of these. I am gonna go big or go home with the marshmallows, guys. Alright. Those taste as good as they look. Okay, so those are the 3 options for you. You can make them with marshmallows, you can make them with coconut, you can make them with just cream cheese and keep it simple. However you make them, please send me a picture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. All right, guys, we are getting ready to read Finding Winnie, and a lot of you may have actually watched an episode or 2 of Winnie the Pooh, but a lot of you may not know that Winnie the Pooh is actually inspired by a real bear cub that lived 110 years ago. That little bear cub was rescued by a World War I soldier and traveled around with that soldier for just a little while before finding her way to the London Zoo. It was at the London Zoo that she met Christopher Robin Milne, and this book gives us the complete story. If you have your copy of Finding Winnie, open it up to the first flap, and remember that every time you hear that bell, it means it's time to turn the page. Finding Winnie, the true story of the world's most famous bear, by Lindsay Maddock and illustrated by Sophie Blackall. "Could you tell me a story?" asked Cole. "It's awfully late." It was long past dark and time to be asleep. "What kind of a story?" "You know, a true story, one about a bear." We cuddled up close. "I'll do my best," I said. A very long time ago, about 100 years before you were born, there was a veterinarian who lived in Winnipeg. His name was Harry Colburn. "A vegetarian?" said Cole. "Bear doesn't like vegetables." "A veterinarian. It means he's an animal doctor." "I know that," said Cole. "That's what I'm going to maybe be when I'm big." If a horse had the hiccups or a cow had a cough, Harry knew how to make them feel just right. Harry's hands were never cold, even in Winnipeg, where the winters are so frosty that icicles grow on the insides of your nose. That was just the kind of doctor he was. But a day came when Harry had to say goodbye to Winnipeg. There was a war far away, beyond the end of the country, and on the other side of the ocean, and he was going to help. He would be caring for the soldiers' horses. Harry rode east on a train full of other soldiers. He leaned his head against the window, watching the land scroll by, wondering what it would be like so far from home. The train rolled right through dinner and over the sunset and around 10 o'clock, and into a nap and out the next day, until it stopped at a place called White River. Harry decided to stretch his legs. On the train platform was a man with a baby. "A baby?" said Cole, annoyed. "A baby bear, a cub." Harry stopped. It's not every day that you see a bear cub at a train station. "That bear has lost its mother," he thought, "and that man must be the trapper who got her." "What do trappers do?" asked Cole. "It's what trappers don't do. They don't raise bears." "Raise them?" "You know," I said. "Love them." Harry thought for a long time. Then he said to himself, "There is something special about that bear." He felt inside his pocket and said, "I shouldn't." He paced back and forth and said, "I can't. Then his heart made up his mind, and he walked up to the trapper and said, "I'll give you $20 for that bear." "Is $20 a lot?" asked Cole. "Back then," I said, "even more than a lot." "Captain Colburn," said the colonel on the train, as the little bear sniffed at his knee, "we are on a journey of 1,000 miles, heading into the thick of the battle, and you propose to bring this most dangerous creature?" Bear stood straight up on her little hind legs, as if to salute the colonel. The colonel stopped speaking at once. Then, in quite a different voice, he said, "Oh, hello." The men of Harry's regiment squeezed by to have a look. "I've decided to name her Winnipeg," Harry told them, "so we'll never be far from home. It'll be Winnie for short." They had a very long way to travel, and they had already gone 3 or 4 feet when Winnie grew hungry. "What do bears eat?" the men wondered. "What don't they eat?" said Harry. "Vegetables," Cole reminded me. "Winnie ate vegetables," I said. "She ate everything except onions." They brought her carrots and potatoes and apples and tomatoes and eggs and beans and bread and a tin of fish and some slop in a dish, but Winnie was still hungry. "How about dessert?" said Harry, holding up a bottle of condensed milk. Taking the treat in her paws, Winnie lay on her back and hummed a happy song as she drank. The men roared. Harry and Winnie gathered with soldiers from all over Canada in the green fields of Valcartier. A whole city of tents had sprung up there. One was a hospital for horses, where Harry went to work. Winnie was in the army now. Harry taught her to stand up straight and hold her head high, and turn this way and that, just so. Soon, she was assigned her own post. Even the colonel agreed that Winnie was a remarkable bear. She might have been the best navigator in the whole army. If you hid something, could she find it? She could. What if it was farther away, and farther still? "Remarkable," he cried. In the evenings, both of them were too tired to move. When Harry thought about Winnie and the voyage across the ocean, his head said, "I shouldn't." His head said, "I can't." But his heart made up his mind. Nobody had ever tried to float so many people and animals across the Atlantic Ocean before. 30 ships sailed together, carrying about 36,000 men and about 75,000 horses, and about one bear named Winnie. If you look up close, you can see Winnie just sitting at the front end of the ship there. When they finally arrived in England, the regiment went to training on the Salisbury Plain, where it rained and rained. But Winnie didn't seem to mind. She was the mascot of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade, and she attended her post with vigor. One day, Harry came running while she was doing her exercises in the tent. "You'll bring the whole place down," he said with a laugh. She had grown. It was winter when the order came. The time had come to fight. Winnie posed proudly with the men for a picture to send home to their families. Harry thought for a long time. His head argued one way and then the other, but his heart made up his mind. He went to Winnie and said in a serious way, "There's somewhere we need to go." Winnie brushed the mud off her nose and nuzzled in close. Harry drove all the way to the big city. "Here we are," said Harry, "the London Zoo." Harry took a deep breath. "Winnie, "This is going to be your home for a while," he said. She tilted her head. "We're shipping out to France," he explained. "I have to take care of the horses at the front." She rested her big head against him. "I know you want to come, but it's not safe." Winnie's head bowed. Harry's hands were warm as sunshine as usual. "There is something you must always remember," Harry said. "It's the most important thing, really. Even if we're apart, I'll always love you. You'll always be my bear." "Is it the end?" "That's the end of Harry and Winnie's story," I said. "But I don't want it to be over," said Cole. "Sometimes," I said, "you have to let one story end so the next can begin." "How do you know when that will happen?" "You don't," I said, "which is why you should always carry on." Once upon a time, there was a little boy with a stuffed bear. He had had his bear ever since he was a baby, but somehow the boy had never found the right name for him. He tried Teddy and Edward and even Big Bear. One day the boy went to visit the London Zoo with his father, and there was a bear, a real bear, on the terraces there. Right away the boy thought, "There is something special about that bear." Her name was Winnie. They became true friends. The boy was allowed to come right inside her enclosure to play. Once the boy had found Winnie, he knew just what to call his stuffed bear. He named it Winnie, Winnie the Pooh, and the boy was called... "Cole?" said Cole. No, his name was Christopher Robin Milne. Christopher Robin would visit Winnie at the zoo, and then he would take his stuffed animal on all sorts of adventures in the woods behind his home. His father, Alan Alexander Milne, wrote books all about them. Harry's Winnie became Winnie the Pooh, and there has never been a more beloved bear. "But what about Harry?" Cole asked. When Harry visited Winnie at the zoo, he saw how happy she was. She was being raised, she was being truly loved, and that was all he had ever wanted from the moment they met at that train station in White River. So after the war, Harry returned to Winnipeg and his life as an animal doctor. Before long, he was married and had a son named Fred, and Fred had a daughter named Lorene, and Lorene had a daughter named Lindsay, which is me. And then I had a son, and when I saw you, I thought, there is something special about this boy, so I named you after your great-grandfather, Captain Harry Colburn. I named you Cole. "That's me," said Cole in a whisper. "That's you. And that's Winnie?" "Yes," I said, "that's Winnie." "And it's all true?" "Sometimes the best stories are," I said. Cole's eyes grew big, and he said nothing for a long time. Then he hugged his own bear close and let out a yawn that reached far away, and they both turned over and fell asleep. That is the end of the story, but at the end of this book, there is an album full of real-life pictures of Harry. And this one is of Harry as a young soldier, right about the time that he met that little bear at the train station. This is a diary that Harry kept, and there's a little log here. On August 24th in 1914, Harry wrote down, "Bought a bear, $20. These are some incredibly fun pictures. If you look up close, you will see the real Winnie, the bear cub, in all of these pictures with the soldiers. This one up here is with 3 different soldiers. This one is Winnie and Harry's actually giving her a snack right there. And in 1992, in Winnipeg, they actually put up a statue of Harry and Winnie. This is a picture here of Winnie and the real Christopher Robin. And this is a picture of Lindsay and Cole. This is the mom who's telling her little boy the story. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, we're getting ready to read Hello, Lighthouse. About 100 years ago, the captains of big ships would rely on lighthouses. Lighthouses would shine huge lights on the shoreline, keeping those captains and their ships from crashing into the rocks as they sailed close to land. And before machines ran those lighthouses, men did. These men lived inside of lighthouses day and night, taking care of that huge light at the top. And this particular book is going to tell us about one of those men who lived inside of a lighthouse almost 100 years ago. If you have your copy of the book Lighthouse, please open it up to the first flap and we will get started reading. Remember that whenever you hear this sound, it means it's time to turn the page. Hello, Lighthouse by Sophie Blackall. On the highest rock of a tiny island at the edge of the world stands a lighthouse. It is built to last forever, sending its light out to the sea, guiding the ships on their way. From dusk to dawn, the lighthouse beams. Hello, 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 lighthouse. The new keeper arrives to replace the old, to carry on tending the light. He polishes the lens and refills the oil and trims the burned end of the wick. Throughout the night, he winds the clockwork that keeps the lamp in motion. During the day, he gives the round rooms a fresh coat of sea green paint. He writes in the logbook and threads his needle and listens to the gathering wind. The wind takes a deep breath and blows and blows. Hello, hello, hello. The keeper boils water and drinks his tea as he fishes for cod from the window. He sets the table and hums a tune, and he wishes for someone to talk to. Every few days he writes her a letter and throws it into the waves. He tends the light and writes in the logbook and waits for her to reply. The sky grows dark and the waves rise and crash. Hello, hello, hello. The keeper looks through his telescope. The tender arrives, bringing oil and flour and pork and beans, and his wife. He shows her around the round rooms of their house. He tends the light and writes in the logbook and sets the table for two. The fog makes everything disappear. A bell rung to warn the ships. One thick night, disaster strikes. A boat is wrecked on the rocks. Not a moment to lose, the keeper rows out. He pulls 3 sailors from the deep Black Sea. He tends the light and writes in the logbook and wraps the sailors in blankets. The sea turns into a carpet of ice. Hello, hello, hello. One dawn, the keeper begins to sneeze. By dusk, he is terribly ill. His wife is everywhere all at once, running up and down the spiral stairs. She tends the light and chips ice off the lantern room windows. She sits by his side and writes in the logbook the moment his fever breaks. The icebergs pass by on their journey south. The whales pass by on their journey north. Hello, hello, hello. Inside the lighthouse, the woman walks around and around the room. Her husband boils water and helps her breathe in and out. He tends the light and writes in the logbook, and notes the birth of their child. The sky erupts in swirls of green. Hello, hello, hello. The tender arrives bringing oil and flour and pork and beans in the mail, along with fresh books and news from the land. And there's an unexpected letter with the Coast Guard seal. The keeper winds the clockwork and polishes the lens, just as he's always done. He tends the light and writes in the logbook, but knows that it's not for long. Together they watch the horizon. The Coast Guard arrives with a brand new light and installs the machine to run it. No lamp to fill, no wick to trim. The keeper's work is done. He climbs to the top of the spiral stairs and closes the logbook for good. They pack their belongings into the boat and wave farewell to the gulls. Beyond the breakers, they all look up. Goodbye, lighthouse. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. On the highest rock of a tiny island at the edge of the world stands a lighthouse. It is built to last forever, sending its light out to sea. The fog rolls in and the fog rolls out. The waves rise and crash. The wind blows and blows. Hello, hello, hello. Over the waves, across the bay, a light on the land beams back. Hello, 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 lighthouse. The end. So the lighthouse keeper moved out of the lighthouse with his family onto the shoreline. Because of that machine, they don't need to live in the lighthouse anymore, but they live on the shore and they watch it to make sure that it continues to shine. As you can kind of see back here in this picture that's extra long, right up here in the corner is their house where they live instead. Now this is a really neat story because nowadays most ships have GPS systems in them. They're global positioning systems, which means that now ships communicate with satellites instead of lighthouses to let them know where the shoreline is. But this is an amazing little book that kind of gives you a little history on what it used to be like when lighthouses were used. Hey friends, Shepherdess at Harmony Farms here, and I'm so excited for you to be entering the art contest. If you don't yet have an art contest submission form, have an adult help you. Check the description of this video for details on how to get one. Those details will also tell you how to send your picture to me. If for any reason you need to print off another copy, maybe you messed up on this one and need a fresh sheet, you're gonna find that here in the summer camp classroom. What you can also do is just use a fresh sheet of white paper, but make sure to cut off this portion. You can staple that portion or paper clip it to that fresh sheet of white paper with your drawing on it, but it's really important that you fill out the top half of this page. In case you are selected winner, I need to know where to send your prize and what size the t-shirt should be. Once you are finished with your picture, put it in an envelope and mail it to me. You will find my mailing address on that art contest submission form. Also, here are some ideas as to what you can draw pictures of. You can draw pictures of animals from your own homestead if you have one. You can draw a picture that was maybe inspired by one of the books that we read, whether it was Finding Winnie or the Lighthouse Story. You can draw a picture of yourself doing your favorite activity. Maybe you have a pet that you love and you could draw a picture of that pet. Those are just a few ideas, guys. Have fun with it, and I look forward to seeing what you choose to draw.